Previously, I've covered Shadow Tower Abyss and King's Field 4, two PS2 era games made by From Software, which are probably mostly known for being inspirations for the larger Souls franchise. I really like those games, and they got me wishing From would take another crack at this style. In the meantime though, we have indie games to fill the void. And on that topic, Lunacid, a game so inspired by the works of From Software that it directly says so in its Steam description. Lunacid was basically a solo project by indie developer Kira, who's actually known for their work on horror games Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion and Lost in Vivo. I've played neither of these, but I know they're both well regarded. The horror background can be felt here in a good way. Lunacid's a good attempt at capturing what made those games great, while making some changes to keep itself distinct. It's got some good ideas to make itself more accessible, though I do feel it stumbles in one or two areas. All in all, I'm here to recommend it though. So let's have a look at a modern take on an older style of game with Lunacid. Lunacid opens on a world much like our own, seemingly more modern considering VHS tapes exist. It then shows how one day, a gigantic beast arose from the ocean and spread poison fog around the world, destroying much of civilization and causing people to cast humans and undesirables down a giant well. The digital manual the game comes with also describes how at this time, the moon started to ooze liquid moonlight which fell to the earth and is the cause of the giant well in question. You play as some thief who gets tossed down the well to your intended death, while also getting one of your hands cut off. There's also people saying you just play as the severed hand, but I think that's a theory, not actually true. Either way, I have no idea how you use bows. So you wake up inside the mystery well filled with monsters and other weird stuff, but you happen upon a helpful demon girl named Demi. She takes you to a sanctuary within the well, filled with friendly NPCs to provide you with goods, services, or some stories. From there you'll journey through the well and encounter a variety of weird things and places. No idea how any of this makes sense being down a gigantic hole, but I think you could just play moon magic. There is more to Lunacid's story, but it's in the From Software style of not telling you anything directly and requiring you to find every noted dialogue to fit together puzzle pieces into a larger picture. Honestly, even though I thought I was doing a good job of reading everything and talking to everyone, I basically had no idea what the plot was by the time I got to the end. I knew stuff about the world, but the main story as it were, just wasn't conveyed well in my opinion. Maybe I missed it? And then there's the multiple endings which get interesting, to say the least. I don't think people typically play these kinds of games for their story though. They play and then they look up YouTube videos to explain the story to them. So minor gripe with the whole genre aside, I did think the world and lore I found were neat, and there was some good environmental storytelling. Lunacid is a first-person hack-and-slash RPG, also having more emphasis on platforming than you'll usually find in these kinds of games. You journey around, fight monsters, find new weapons and spells, and explore its environments for its many secrets. And if there's one thing I think Lunacid does better than its inspirations, it's its environments. The game goes for a retro PS2 era look, which it pulls off pretty well, but you'll notice pretty quickly how different its level design is. Levels can be more open, allowing you to run around, or be cramped and claustrophobic. Maybe one or two of them could have used a map, but you generally don't need one. They can be brightly lit, or dark to the point where you need a torch or other light source. Locations have different themes which make them stand out from each other, and every now and then, you get an area that's actually a little scary. Other From Software games rarely have ever felt creepy to me, but when Lunacid combines its lighting with its creepy enemies and levels, it can really work, as expected of a horror dev. It all gets to the point where you just don't know what to expect, and I like the variety here. I also really like the character designs, from the friendly NPCs to the various monsters ranging from faceless people and eldritch horrors to giant snails. Weapons look nice, and the same goes for the spell effects. The music here is actually a fun talking point. When I said Lunacid was a mostly solo project, that's because the soundtrack was worked on by other content creators. You can also see the track and its composer whenever it starts playing. The music tends to be more atmospheric and moody, but can go into some fun tunes when it needs to. I'll also say the general sound effects are well done. I like the sound that plays when you land a hit in a critical area. It's nice feedback. A well done soundtrack that fits the game perfectly. And said game is pretty fun. Going through dark catacombs and fighting whatever gets in your way is a classic. You can be a close range fighter or stay at a distance with bows or magic. It also adds jumping, giving you really fluid movement. Really, a lot of enemies can be avoided if you want. Combat is done through charging up your weapon for a swing, either fully or just a bit for a weaker strike. Very similar in practice to other games' stamina systems. But let's get talking about the particulars of Lunacid's gameplay, as they're what makes it stand out from being called a King's Field knockoff. Essentially, Lunacid is like Kingsfield or Shadow Tower, and they simplified their systems and added in some conveniences, as well as 1 or 2 quirks. Starting with character creation, you get a few starting classes, 1 or 2 of which have slight effects in certain sections. It's mostly just starting stats though. Said stats are strength, defense, speed, dexterity, intelligence, and resistance. Many of these are standard. Strength equals more damage dealt, defense is your health and affects how you can block, intelligence is for spell damage and maximum mana. But then we get dexterity increasing damage done by ranged weapons, and your jump height. Speed just flat out increases your movement speed, allowing you to zoom across the game. Resistance is actually kind of pointless, reducing how long status effects stay around, but I think Kira knew the resistance is useless joke from Dark Souls, because apparently when you level the stat to 100, you start regenerating mana passively. On that note, stat scaling is apparently very linear, meaning there isn't a drop off or once you get over 50 strength there's diminishing returns. You just keep getting stronger. This is all an example of Lunacid keeping something simple but adding a fun touch. Spells are similar, having a classic Fireball and Lightning Bolt, as well as utility spells that light up areas. Some are rapid fire and some need to be charged for longer, but then you have weird spells, like one that just spawns coffins being very memorable, or one that gives life to inanimate objects and makes them move around and make noises. I don't think there's a single use for it, it's just fun and weird. Damage types are just physical or one of several elements, as shown through an icon. You would even have armor. Equipment just consists of your weapons, spells, and items. I do wish they had armor though, it was always fun to find. I do like that they got rid of durability though. I've rarely ever thought I'd add anything to these kinds of games other than annoyance. They also kept some of the interesting elements from previous games, like Shadow Tower Abyss's dismemberment system, where you could cut off limbs to weaken enemies, or the weapon experience system from Kingsfield 4, where weapons got stronger if you used them a bunch, with them completely transforming in this game. I got really excited when I found a new weapon, not just because of the weapon, but what it could potentially become. It makes finding even a broken sword handle fun. You find a lot of things in this game. In general, you'll be consistently gathering crafting materials to make things like potions in the hub area. I didn't find it super useful, but it saved me spending money. But besides that, this game loves secrets. Hidden walls are everywhere, sometimes behind other hidden walls. They aren't too hard to find though, just smack walls at dead ends or in rooms that don't have much interesting in them. They actually have it so some hidden passages end with an eyeball thing that can only be destroyed from that end, and they result in new passages or shortcuts a lot of the time. You'll also find a bunch of permanent health and mana boosters, which feel very tangible by the time you gather a bunch. I remember other games only having a few of them, and they didn't feel that important by the end, so this was a nice change. But let's remember when I said this game stumbles in a few places. Besides the vagueness of the story, what's my other problem with this game? Unfortunately, I don't think the combat really works that well, from a combination of multiple things. Firstly, ranged weapons like bows have no ammunition. At first I thought this was great, until I realized how easy I can make all the fights by just spamming arrows from a distance. Not a huge problem though. Then we have the player's defensive options. If you recall me saying the defense stat affects your blocking, you may have inferred that you can block in this game. The problem is that blocking is pointless, because your movement speed is so fast, moving out of the way is far easier. And I didn't put a lot of points into speed. Even at base, you can outmaneuver most things with ease. The player's speed makes it fun going through areas without it being slow, but this style of combat was made around the player being slow. And then we get to the part that might make me sound crazy. The game controls too well. It's too fluid and not clunky enough. Maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome from Software's entries, but in those games, there was real tension in combat because you couldn't just run away or tank a bunch of hits. Combat was awkward and lethal, and that's what made it work and engage the player. It made every hit feel like it mattered. Lunacid looks similar, but playing it just doesn't have the same feel. Combat doesn't have that oomph, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying it's bad combat, but it doesn't work as well with its slight changes. Other points of criticism include bosses. This game has bosses, but you'll have to play quite a bit before you find one. I kept getting to the end of areas expecting some climax or payoff, but there just wasn't one. I also think the bosses tended to have too much health, but mainly I just think there should have been more of them. I'll also say that if you want to find all the stuff in this game, use a guide. You think you can find all the secrets, but then you'll get to the one that relies on the real-world moon phases, which also partially affects magic. Some of these you just won't find on your own. Also, when you get to the castle, you need to use blood magic to activate this switch. It's not conveyed well, and I know I'm not the only one who got stuck trying to find a key item. But all that said, I had a really fun time with Lunacid. It's a love letter to games I love. Sometimes maybe a little too blatantly, but I enjoyed the many references I can find. I like its take on this genre that's a bit more friendlier with its mechanics that I feel I could openly recommend to people who don't like hard games. While I wish the combat was a bit improved, I still liked being a fast-moving superhuman that could decimate enemies, and I really liked its level design and the variety. Lunacid doesn't scratch the same itch left by From Software, but it scratches a very similar itch. I would be very excited at the announcement of a Lunacid 2. So if you like From Software and want to see a game filled with nods to their work, you want to get into Kingsfield but you want a gentler entry point, or you just want a pretty fun game, go play Lunacid. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you liked it for some weird reason, consider leaving a like or comment. If you didn't like it, well, leave a comment anyways about what I did wrong. If you want to hear about more games I think are neat, or whatever random thing I end up making videos on, maybe also think about subscribing. Whatever you choose to do, I hope you have a nice day.